Hi, everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm a graduate student in Comparative Media Studies. I have a background in animation and public health research, and I'm fascinated by people who can take big, complex history topics and offer them up for discussion in artistic formats. So I'm really excited to be speaking with Rosa today for a cast conversation, and love to give Rosa a chance for a self-introduction.
Hi, I'm Rosa, and I am an illustrator, comic artist from Puerto Rico. I live in San Juan, and I've been self-publishing comics for 10 years. And recently, I've switched over to political comics, where I tried to write a comic about our experiences in the island, our politics, and all the problems that have surfaced after Hurricane Maria specifically. And I usually publish mostly on the Nib, but I've also been published on The Believer and The Lily for the Washington Post.
Hey, well, so my first question sort of brings us here today is pretty basic, but what brought you to MIT and how is it influencing your work?
Well, I was invited by Cast and Mikhail Jacobson to work for the MIT Game Lab on illustrations for a board game based on the Promesa law in Puerto Rico. So the Promesa law is a law that President Obama signed way back in 2016, and it imposes a fiscal oversight and control board over our government. And it's been a huge, of course, it's been a huge issue here. And I wrote a little bit about it on my comics. And so Michael contacted me based on that because they wanted somebody who was native to the problem and to the country to do the illustrations for this board game.
Oh, I'm also interested in sort of this shift from some of the more 2D static artistic formats that you said you're kind of that you're rooted in, and how the interactivity and the collaboration of this project affects your approach to covering the topic.
Well, it's been really interesting because I never worked on a game board before, and I sometimes I hardly even play them even. So it was very interesting to figure out how to tell a story.
I cannot tell right now if it's just my. Okay, it looks like Rosa is frozen. It's not just me. So while I think we wait for Rosa to join us, I think I can use this time to sort of set up the next line of question that I have. Basically, I had the wonderful opportunity to play test the Promesa board game that the Game Lab is working on and that Rosa is contributing to. And the design of it to me is just really fascinating. It takes this complex story of the law that Rosa was just describing and puts you in the position of maybe generally the Puerto Rican government trying to make balances between spending money on infrastructure and education and paying off its debt to the US. And the debt is sort of in the form of these physical jewels that you're trying to push off of the map. But in order to do that, you also need to spend some of those jewels on education, on infrastructure. Rosa is back. Cool.
Yes, I'm so sorry. The internet, it's crazy here.
Yeah.
I fixed it, so hopefully it won't happen again.
All right. I was talking a little bit about my experience playtesting the game and just the way that it kind of works. I think we can circle back to some of the experience with the medium as a part of this question. But I was essentially sort of talking about how one thing that stuck out to me about this game was how really closely tied the topic and the format are compared to other games that I've had the chance to test out with the Game Lab and their anti-colonial board game project, sort of playing other board games that approach this topic. One thing that stuck out to me about a lot of those games is that the colonialist themes usually have nothing to do with the actual gameplay or the interactions, and rather than make some sort of educational or aesthetic or emotional statement about colonialism, those games usually just use the theme as an excuse to have fun while collecting treasure. And so it was really refreshing for me to see this board game dive into the tricky questions of how to educate and offer a meaningful aesthetic experience and highlight the emotional experience of balancing infrastructure and education and debt at that government level. And so my next question is related to that. In contributing your artwork to this game, I really want to know what it's like to try to do all those things at once and have the artwork also help people learn how to play the game. And so I know you got cut off a little bit in sort of explaining how the format affects you, but I think this can sort of all be rolled up into one big question.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, Mikhail didn't explain to me how the game was before I got to MIT for the quick visit, and I think he was right, because you have to actually experience it. Because it's I was also kind of expecting it to be like, well, I'm gonna educate you about this, and you're gonna roll the dice, and you're gonna get to from point A to point B, and that's it. But I think what they created is very creative, because it puts the person in the position of having to actually analyze on how to spend the resources of a whole country, but in a very simple way. So one of my challenges is how to contextualize that so it's even more obvious, so that when the game asks you to invest in infrastructure, then what specific example of Puerto Rico's history can I use there, so that the person can engage with history as well as engage with the game. And because I do comics, I'm very used to, well, I'll walk you through the story. But now the people actually have to like play the game, and it's very cooperative too, like you noticed. So what I think my challenge is how to present Puerto Rico in a non-stereotypical way, how to contextualize the history so that the person understands how to play it, but at the same time learn something about how, well, if we put the resources from education to infrastructure, then you lose this, and this is going to happen. It could end up in a protest. It could end up in a teacher strike. But also, one of the things that I'm very excited to work on with this project is that Mikhail also wanted a comic book as the instructions. But then the comic book is not only just going to be the instructions on how to play, it'll be a conversation between two players about the context of the history of the game. So I'm very excited to be able to put something that I'm very comfortable with into the game, at the same time while being challenged with all of the illustrations and kind of like the decisions of what I want to illustrate there, so that the person takes something away from the game more than the enjoyment of playing it.
Well, and I think that leads me into my final question of, there's a lot to unpack in this game. I think it'll mean a lot depending on who plays it, in what context, and when even. And so my last question to you is who do you want to play this game?
I want everybody to play the game, but I know that everybody here is super excited. The moment I said that I was working on a board game about Puerto Rico, people were like, but what is it about? What I need to know. Do you have a prototype? And they were so excited. So I would really love to have, once everything is done to a point, I would really love to have a community after the pandemic, after everything. A community play, so that people here can add their own stories to the game, and maybe start, like, I think this game can probably have a type of closure or healing on some of these topics, like oh yeah, like they could go, oh, I remember when we protested about this, or I remember how I felt when the government announced this and that, but that they are also working together and realize that, oh yeah, if we do invest in education, we might have a way out. So it sounds like a bit of a grim game, saying like, oh, this is just to push the debt off the island, and the debt is so huge that it's unpayable, and you're going to learn that. But I think because it's cooperative, it has a way to maybe help form a conversation so that people can get a little bit of closure and a little bit of recontextualization on their feelings and of their history. So I'm very excited to play here.
Yeah, I'm excited to play the final game as well.
Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. This was a really fantastic conversation. It was really inspiring to learn more about your own approach to this work, how the dialogue around the project and exposure to some of the issues that you're talking about, getting that into MIT and making that part of the conversation around here, something that I really appreciated seeing. So thank you so much, and thanks for this.
No, thank everybody for letting me work on this project.
Thank you, Sam and Rosa, and thanks everyone for joining us for this conversation. Please visit arts.mit.edu/FromAnywhere for a wide range of arts activities, online exhibitions and performances, research, and more. Also, keep an eye on our website for more information about this board game and the developments in the future. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.
Bye.